Okay. So first off, thank you for joining me today here to talk about alcohol direct to consumer shipping. As some of you have alluded, there's actually a lot of misinformation out there. So while there's a lot of slides, some slides I'll quickly go through, others we can spend more time. And feel free to interrupt if there's something in particular, if we can go topic by topic versus at the end. So this is me, AmeriCraftBier. This is a quick explanation of me. Why am I an expert for direct-to-consumer shipping? The way I got into direct-to-consumer shipping is I actually have an export business. For the last 6-7 years, I have actually been exporting U.S. craft beer to Europe, Asia, and parts of Quebec province. And I've noticed, in particular with my European partners, that not only are they importers, distributors, but many of them do direct-to-consumer shipping either within their country or all throughout Europe. So I figured, how can we do that in the U.S.? So for the last almost 5 years, I've really delved into the rules, the laws, the regulations, and the logistics of how to do it legally, illegally, and gray area. And as many of you are smirking, you understand why I'm saying that. So first thing is, let's get a quick definition. DTC is part of e-commerce, but there's two types of e-commerce. Many of you are familiar with the DoorDashes, the mini bars. That's what is really classified as last mile delivery of home delivery. That is still predicated on having distribution and also retailers carrying your beer. So those platforms, a consumer will go on, log in what their address is, based on where their address is. There will be, 10 retailers within a mile radius who can deliver to them. And those deliveries will either be someone physically on a bike, on a car, or what have you, bringing them. It's not involving shipping it. What we're talking about today is direct-to-consumer shipping intra and interstate, and what we'll focus on. So that involves the brewery taking an order via your website, or it can also be on the phone, and then shipping the beer to a consumer either within the state or out of state. And again, as many of you know, U.S. Postal Service still does not ship alcohol. You have to use a third-party courier, where FedEx and UPS are the primary ones out there. Okay, these are the various topics we'll go through. Some stats, which states you can ship to. Are you set up? What do you need to do for some of the logistics and operations for doing DTC? Compliance, of course, and then some legal advocacy out there. These are some various stats, craft drinkers, DTC purchases. This is from the Harris poll, which was done in conjunction with the U.S. Brewers Association 2021. Germane fact here is people want it. 83% of craft beer drinkers have purchased DTC. And you can see some of the statistics. Age range, no surprise. The vast majority are, 21 to 54. Consumers want DTC laws expanded. And that's very important, which you'll see in the next coming slides. Pretty much 83% of people want DTC legislation to open up. They are eager to purchase beers, from breweries out of state. If it was allowed, there is high purchase intent. Similarly, also in the high 70s, 80% of people interested in purchasing beers direct to consumer if it was illegal in the states that they reside in. Same thing, purchase intent if a brewery did the DTC. And you can just see some of the breakouts here in terms of likely or somewhat likely, but still high 70s in terms of purchase intent. Demographics, nothing surprising here. 61% higher income of 100,000 or more. Age range 21 to 34. So was that millennials, I guess? Then 36 are some of Gen Xers. And no surprise here. Again, education-wise, tend to be higher education. Oops. Okay, demographics by region. This is actually interesting, which I found surprising. It's actually the South and the West are the predominant spots where people want DTC. The only thing I could think of is there's a high preponderance of Northeast breweries with some of the top breweries. Your other halves, your Equilibriums, your Trilliums, your Tree Houses are primarily in the Northeast. So those breweries, especially pre-COVID, which didn't do distribution, it was very difficult or rare for them to be obviously in the West or South. Obviously things have changed now with, post-COVID, where many of those breweries are now doing distribution. Breweries doing DTC distribution under current laws. This was from the Brewers Association survey in 2021. Only 13% of breweries they surveyed were doing DTC shipping. Obviously, to-go sales, curbside, obviously was a big boon for breweries when COVID hit. Now, Brewery Interest, if DTC shipping was legal, notice the spike. Now it's like over 70% of breweries would be interested in doing it if it was legal. This is just various alcohol DTC marketing tools. No surprise, social media is the predominant marketing tool that people are using. Okay. Most people don't realize alcohol DTC was actually $6.1 billion. That statistic surprises a lot of people. That's actually about 4% of all off-prem sales, so it is not insignificant. Obviously, the vast majority of it is wine. Wine DTC alone is close to $4 billion. You can see beer is close to $1 billion, spirits is about $1.3 billion, but the germane point, it is growing. Obviously, COVID has really, increased the spike, obviously comparing 2019 to 2020. Some people say there'll be a slight leveling off, in the coming years. Alcohol online penetration rates, again, this is here. Pre-COVID, 2019, less than 0.5% of breweries were doing, or not breweries, but in terms of market penetration. Now it's about triple. Still very small, 1.3, 1.4%, but compare that to wine, which is probably creeping up to 10% of penetration rates online. Spirits has similarly also increased. Why do DTC sales? Number one, enter new markets, engage directly with your consumers, control your own destiny. Entering new markets, obviously DTC shipping, it's not reliant on three-tier distribution. As many of you know, once you start leaving your home market, trying to find distributors willing to work with you, who are going to give you your brand awareness, so on and so forth, it's getting more and more difficult with distributor consolidation every single year. I remember a statistic comparing, what was it, in the 1990s to today, there's something like 50% less alcohol distributors in that time frame. And as you're probably well aware of, there's going to be fewer and fewer alcohol distributors as the larger players consolidate and buy up the smaller ones. So the choke points, will be harder and harder in the years to come. As you're well aware of, there's just SKU overload. 3,000, 4,000 SKUs for some of these large distributors. Again, what's good about that is not reliant on the markets. Target markets you want to enter based on data you may already have. Via your social media accounts, your email list, you can find out where there is interest, for your beers. By checking various things where people are. One thing I recommend, if you are doing email signups, ask people to put a zip code, versus just an email, ask for a zip code, or better yet, even a full state and city. So that way you can target where there's interest. Obviously, trends in consumer buying habits, direct, online, mobile. Gen Z and millennials, that's how they're buying things. Gen Z in particular, they don't want to step into a retail store. It's whether good or bad, it is definitely a trend we're seeing of how people are shopping. And again, this is obviously more predominant in urban areas and suburban areas versus some of the rural areas. Again, build brand awareness, online. And also you can use that with potentially getting distributors. If you can show a distributor, hey, I am shipping 200 cases a month in these 5 zip codes, that gives you great ammunition to show to a distributor that there is demand for your beer in that area. Engage directly with consumers. As everyone knows here, data is king. If you're working through your distributor, various retail partners, how much data are you getting from them, and in particular about your customers, or their customers even. Engaging directly with DTC, there are various things and analytics you can do in terms of knowing their buying habits, purchase histories, knowing when they buy, they like to buy, and there's various programs and companies that specialize on how to target various consumers once you get enough data regarding their purchase history, when they buy. You'd be surprised. Some people like to buy at 3 in the morning because the kids are asleep, they're downtime, and that's when they purchase things online. And if you know that about your customer, guess what? 10 minutes before 1 in the morning or 2 in the morning, you send them an ad. So there's various ways you can do once you have the data, and that's something that direct-to-consumer will allow you to have versus traditional methods out there. Again, targeting upsells, offers, once you know more about your customer. Control your own destiny. Again, this is, here you're controlled by your ability, number one, make quality beer. Number two, it's your ability to market yourself. DTC is not a panacea. Just because you can do it, you still need to market yourself. Your customers just don't show up. So that is still something that you still also need to learn how to do if you're not doing it already. Leverage your Instagram accounts, your Facebook, your Twitter. These are all channels now you can effectively gauge true ROI versus just saying, hey, we're doing a special beer release, this coming weekend, great. You have no idea what the ROI is at, But with DTC, you can. Doing special offers, giving promo codes, again, so there's various ways you can actually track your ROI. And again, leveraging your social media accounts, your email lists, and other avenues that you have. Now we're going to compare the differences between winery direct-to-consumer selling. Winery DTC is the most evolved. Wineries can ship to 47 states and the District of Columbia. As you can see in this map, there's some outliers, Utah, Mississippi, but what's more important, wineries can ship to 97% of the US population, which is huge. Winery DTC is the lifeblood for many small and medium-sized wineries, and they were the ones to push for it. This is regarding retailer DTC. It's a little bit more evolved. There's about 11 states, throw in California and New Mexico, so about 13, but they have various rules and regulations with that, so it's not totally open. Distillery DTC. Distillery DTC is about 9 states with District of Columbia. There are some caveats in places like Oregon and Pennsylvania and some others. But what's interesting, the distiller guilds, both at the national level and at the various state levels, as you can see, they are pushing a lot of bills out there with trying to change laws. And as we'll allude to later on, that is very important in what is needed. And this is something that the winery industry did. It's taken them 15 years, though, to get to where they are with 47 states. So it is definitely slow. It's a slow process, but it can be done, which the wine industry has shown. Brewery DTC. Now we look at brewery DTC again for out-of-state brewery DTC. It's roughly about 11 states. Hawaii is pending. More importantly, fairly recently, California has a bill out there that made it through the first step, which I think is their version of the House of Representatives, and now needs to go to the second step of their Senate. If California allows that, that is a big boon. As you can all imagine, California is the #1 market. So hopefully this will get passed, sometime this year. What's interesting to note, these 4 states, California, Texas, Florida, and New York, if they allowed out-of-state DTC shipping, that alone is 1/3 of the US population. So a significant market if those 4 states ever allowed it, for breweries to ship to. So hopefully, Texas, I know, is very difficult, their legislation. I know there have been various, the Texas Guild has tried, but it's pretty much been shot down each time, often at the behest of the wholesaler tier, which is no surprise to anyone. Okay, what do you need to do? There are various things physically you need to do, operationally, and then also from getting set up, permits, et cetera. First thing is, do you have the space in your brewery for doing DTC? You're gonna need pick-pack space, you're gonna need tables, scales, if you want to get crazy, conveyor belts to move things along, then basic equipment, label printers, scales, then supplies, boxes, tapes, so on and so forth, and then the space to store all these materials, and then coming up with SOPs for pick-packs, pick-pack shipping. Then in terms of technical resources, how many of you here have a UPS or FedEx alcohol shipper account already? Oh, okay, about half of the room, okay. I'm assuming you're already doing DTC already in some form or another? Oh, no?
Well,
Okay.
it was allowed during the pandemic.
Okay, okay. So about half of you already have it. So that's the first step. Before COVID, it was very hard. It took me about 9 months to get set up with UPS, showing them my TTB, showing them my New York SLA wholesaler's permit. But now, during COVID, it's taken a lot quicker. UPS and FedEx have really wisened up, and now I think they are actively approaching the alcohol sector for opening up accounts now, because they are seeing it as being a big revenue source for the obvious reasons. Other thing is, what website platform are you currently on? WooCommerce, Shopify, et cetera. And if you haven't done that, which do you want to use? There's pros and cons to each platform. I don't want to get into it, but and that's one of the things you need to consider. And if you have a DTC site on right now, and you should just show of hands roughly, so about 1, 2, 3, so about 5 of you guys, okay? Then integrations with your current point of sale system, inventory management, invoicing, and accounting software. The more you sell, the more important that is. You do 10 orders a day, no big deal. You can manually do invoices, so on and so forth. You start doing 30, 40 orders a day or 100, yeah, it becomes a time suck. So finding ways to integrate that with your inventory, invoicing, et cetera. Then online digital marketing expertise. As I mentioned before, you still need to know how to market yourself. Just because you have everything set for doing DTC, you've got to get customers, Customer service, who's going to handle this? Once you start doing DTC, you will get everything in underneath the sun with people contacting you from, where's my tracking number, something broke, my credit card, so on and so forth. So who in your team will handle that? And it is almost a 24/7 job. People these days will contact you through, obviously, email, through your Instagram, DM, your Facebook, your Twitter, and unfortunately, they expect a reply immediately. That's unfortunately the nature of the consumer now, and unfortunately, that's Amazon. That's the Amazon effect. Everyone wants things immediately, whether it's delivery, but even customer service. Then also from a staffing standpoint, various quarterly and monthly reporting, alcohol excise taxes, various reporting that you have to do, which I'll allude to next. This is important. How many of you are familiar with the Granholm-Heald Supreme Court case? Anyone? Okay, one of you. That pretty much is the pivotal U.S. Supreme Court case that made direct-to-consumer shipping essentially legal in the United States. Simply put, the states of Michigan and New York State were sued by a consumer. The consumer was basically saying, why can't they get wines out of state? Because in this case, New York State wineries they can buy from, but not from out of state. Long story short, the Supreme Court ruled in the favor that it's what they call Dormant Commerce Clause. Simply put is a state cannot discriminate between in-state producers and out-of-state producers. So if New York State and Michigan allowed New York State wineries to ship direct to consumer, they were then violating Dormant Commerce Clause by prohibiting out-of-state wineries to shipping. So this ruling pretty much, was the floodgates for the opening of the, in this case, winery DTC. Tennessee wine retailers, that just further solidified that Dormant Commerce Clause still has precedence over 21st Amendment. So even though 21st Amendment does allow states' rights for coming up with various alcohol laws, it still says in this case that they cannot discriminate between in and out of state, simply put. So it just further reaffirmed Granholm-Heald. Now we'll go to compliance, and this is probably the most thing that most people are interested because it is very tricky, a lot of bad information, and honestly, that's the headache part of doing direct-to-consumer shipping when you're shipping out of state. First off, most states, you do need to apply for the state's direct-to-consumer shipping permit. Most states have it. Alaska and DC are an exception. So right now, everyone here can ship to the District of Columbia. Alaska, it's not worth it. Shipping, you're going to get killed. But DC, right now you can do it. There's really not much you need to do. Other states, the permits are as low as $50, upwards to $400 plus. Thing is, you may need to still do brand registrations, price postings, recycle deposit, things of that nature. Other things, similarly, you need to get set up. Correct, yes. Yep. Nope. Nope. So let's say you want to ship into Virginia, Ohio, New Hampshire, Vermont, where it is legal, you need to physically apply for state permits in all of those. Similarly, you do need to apply for and get registered with the state's tax and finance department for the obvious reasons they want their money. So you're not going to escape that. This is an interesting question because now you're going to be double excise payments. Being a New York State brewery, you're obviously paying New York State excise tax. And if you're in New York City, you're also paying New York City excise tax. However, if you're shipping to someone in whatever, Ohio, you're effectively paying tax twice because now you're paying Ohio State, beer excise tax. So you can draw that back. It's just a ledgering nightmare of obviously factoring, okay, I shipped out in the month of, February, 80 gallons of beer outside of New York State and obviously drawing back and then, getting a credit for that. But that is something you do also need to think about. Age verification, as you all know, being in the alcohol industry, do not sell to anyone under 21. You want to get in trouble with anyone, that's how you do it. So there's various age verification pre or post sale. Pretty much every courier, FedEx and UPS, as you know, they are supposed to get an adult signature. As we all know, that doesn't happen. But as long as you're showing that you're trying to be compliant, most states are good about it. So use a courier service that is doing adult verification. Obviously, FedEx and UPS are. There are various private courier networks out there. The reliability and is a bit suspect in my opinion. Other things, do not ship to dry zip codes. I did not know this, but New Hampshire has dry zip codes. The state of Connecticut actually has dry zip codes too. Everyone thinks dry zip codes, Kentucky, Utah, Alaska, but yeah, there are some surprising states that do have dry zip codes. Quantity ship limits. Most states have about a 1 case limit, so if that's wine, that's like 9 liters, and for beer, they use, unfortunately, the old standard based on 12 ounce, so it's 288 ounces. Some states it's 2 cases, some states it's an annual limit, and again, it varies from state to state. Then similarly, you need a way to monitor this. Oops. Okay. It's not here, but I do have it somewhere. Yeah. Thing is, it's always changing. It's a very didactic process, so what was good yesterday doesn't mean it's good today. For instance, it was legal up to about 4 months ago for a brewery to ship into the state of Nevada. Nevada changed their laws, namely because of the wholesaler terror. They lobbied against it. So they changed their laws preventing a distributor to ship, not a distributor, but preventing breweries from shipping DTC into the state of Nevada. So that's the thing with these laws and rules. It changes constantly. Yep. Penalty, in most of these states, it is still a felony. Whether they will actually go after you, probably not. Especially if you're a small to mid-sized brewery, it just looks bad from a PR standpoint. But if you're AB InBev, if you're Diageo or Miller Coors, yeah. But normally you'll get a cease and desist letter saying, hey, we found out you've shipped X amount of packages of your beer to our state. It's illegal, blah, blah, blah. Stop it. If you do it, we'll go after you. So typically you'll get a cease and desist letter. And I'll show you further on, some cases.
That's saying that there could be a state.
Correct. State of Virginia, for example, a brewery can only ship 288 ounces per month, which is 1 12-ounce case. Yes, per customer. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry if I forget. Yeah, clarified. Yeah, per customer. Are there ways to game the system? Yeah, a customer just ships it to their brother's house, their aunt's house. Yeah, there's ways people can game the system.
But if you do that, like if I recognize John Smith, Congress Hunt's order,
Correct.
they're not going to get in trouble, they're just fine.
Yeah.
And they probably don't know that.
Yeah, most consumers don't know the rules. Yeah, most consumers know. I mean, I could tell you, I know of various breweries, you could buy 10 cases from them and they'll ship it to you. You know, way over the limit. So quantity ship limits, then obviously the remitting, calculating of the various alcohol tax, and in certain cases, retail tax. This is where it gets very, very complicated. The state of Ohio, not only is there Ohio state alcohol tax, there's Cayuga County, Chicago, the confines of Chicago, they also have a alcohol tax. So it does get very complicated. Not only are there state excise taxes, but in certain states, there's also at the city level, they also impose an alcohol tax. Then in terms of retail tax, some states have a special retail tax just on alcohol. So like I said, the compliance part, like I said, is the really tricky part when doing DTC across state lines. And then obviously the various filing reports, some filing periods, it's monthly, some are quarterly, some are annually. It just varies from state to state. And this is what I'd like to now talk about here. Yep, okay. Yep, Nexus, pretty much for alcohol, as soon as you ship anything, you automatically do Nexus. Most states for non-alcoholic products, the Nexus will be $100,000, or if you do more than 200 shipments a year. When it comes to alcohol, you form a tax Nexus immediately, period. You know? So there is no Nexus. As soon as you start selling anything, you automatically form a tax Nexus. So this is different from selling shirts, shoes or whatever, where typically there are thresholds, $100,000, or if you do more than 200 shipments or whatever. Most breweries and retailers doing DTC shipping outside of state are not in compliance for a variety of reasons. I can name names of breweries you're heard of retail sites you're familiar with, but they're just not doing it. And in particular, some of these alcohol DTC platforms claiming that they can legally get you across. No, no, and no. Just a lot of bad information. Most of these companies are using what they call title of ownership or passage of title loopholes. Have any of you ever heard of that, out of curiosity? Okay, if any company talks to you about that, run away. It's flat out wrong. And that's probably the biggest bad piece of legal advice anyone doing any alcohol direct-to-consumer shipping is being told. Simply put, as an example, if a consumer in Maryland goes to your website and buys some beer from you, title of ownership is claiming, oh, the sale occurred in the state of New York because you're a New York State brewery. So therefore, New York State alcohol laws apply. So whether you are shipping it or a third-party courier like UPS, FedEx, or whatever, you are just facilitating or helping this customer who bought your product in New York State to now ship it to them in Maryland. Alcohol rules do not apply. That does not, it works for shirts, shoes. Yep, back there. Yeah, I won't name them, but yeah, since you name them, yeah. No, and there's a reason, because it's illegal. What they're doing is illegal. Ramifications for your brewery, if they're caught selling your beer and they're doing illegally, no, I don't know. Is it a PR nightmare if they get caught, all it? I don't know. But yeah, they're not doing legally, and there's a dozen others. But
Who was that?
Tavor, if you're familiar with those guys. No, it's not right. No, again, as with anything, it's risk tolerance. And reality-wise, if a state AG or attorney general does go after someone, typically they'll first send you a cease and desist letter. Tavor has received cease and desist letters to from New York State. So if you notice, when Tavor first started, they shipped into New York State. And then about a year or so later, SLA sent them, and if you notice now, Tavor will not ship to New York State. They are finding creative ways to do it. The way they'll legally have to do it is they will have to basically make a beer retail store in New York. That's what they'll have to do. Because once they form a retail, I mean, in theory, that's how you could get around it. And I'm surprised, honestly, Total Wine or Bevmo hasn't done it. You just have to put a retail location in all the key states, you know. And that way, because most states at the retail level, again, without getting totally sidetracked, will allow a alcohol retailer to ship within the state. You know, a wine retailer and a beer retailer in New York State can ship direct to consumer within New York State. They just can't ship in certain, you know, out of state in certain cases. But yeah, so this is the thing, like I said, this is probably 95% of what all of those companies are claiming, you know, title of ownership or passage of title, you know, loopholes. It doesn't work. This is typical verbiage that most of these companies, if you look, which is buried, you know, this took me about 30 minutes of internet time to find out their terms and conditions on a website. And this is the typical verbiage. Accordingly, title of alcohol passes you upon passage in the state, in this case of California, and you are responsible for abiding by your local state and shipping rules. Title of all product passes to the consumer when the goods are picked up by the common carrier. You will be the legal owner of the goods, blah, blah, blah. By choosing shipping as a delivery method, you are asking us to appoint a common carrier to deliver, so on and so forth. So this is interesting here. They want you to indemnify them. Accordingly, you agree to indemnify and hold harmless its agents, blah, 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 shareholders from any and all claims. This doesn't work. There's, you know, and which I'll show you, there's various court cases regarding title of ownership, you know, being shot down. This is an interesting article. If any of you have not seen this, read it. So, this basically asks some of the big DTC shippers out there how they're doing it, and they're all pretty mum. So if you have not read this article, it's a very good article. You know, this was sort of specific, as you guys are probably familiar with. You know, during COVID, various virtual beer festivals have popped up where, you know, companies are shipping beer to you. You go on Zoom or whatever, and everyone's sharing a beer. They've got the brewer there talking about the beer, et cetera. You know, and so this report is wondering, how are they shipping legally to all these states? So this is, like I said, a very good article if you have not had a chance to read it. Here's some just various court cases. This in particular, this is recent. This is March 2020. There's about 8 other court cases debunking title of ownership. This was against Wine Express, AKA Wine Enthusiasts, which you all know is in New York State. So they've gone after Wine.com, Wink, the state of Ohio. They've gone after them, Michigan's Attorney General. This is really interesting. This shows you the amount of DTC shipping. It's not insignificant. Basically, the Michigan Attorney General and the Michigan Beer and Wholesalers Association pretty much did a sting operation, essentially. And they subpoenaed FedEx and UPS records. They showed that 1 million bottles of alcohol were shipped into Michigan in just 6 months, of which 300,000 of those bottles were shipped illegally, so about 1/3. So you can imagine the tax revenue, both retail tax and alcohol excise tax, the state of Michigan lost out on. So it's not insignificant. And then this is even more in October 2020, 2.2 billion bottles were shipped. You know, obviously during COVID times, obviously things spiked. So again, these are not insignificant numbers with direct-to-consumer shipping, and in particular, illegal amounts. And that's why certain attorney generals are starting to go after various companies, because it is a significant amount of money. Tennessee, here, if you want to see what a cease and desist letter, here's Tennessee's version. Here, so various New York companies, and these are some big ones, Flavia, if you guys are familiar with. You know, so they just pretty much, look, stop what you're doing. If you don't stop, we're going to go after you. And like I said, in most states, it's still a felony. Therefore, you jeopardize your federal, your TTB permit in addition to your New York SLA permit. So there can be some serious consequences. You can get jail time. I have not heard of any state AG going that far yet. But again, if you get a cease and desist, stop what you're doing, plain and simple. Okay, legislative advocacy, and these are some various New York State DTC initiatives. In particular, the New York State Distillers Guild, the Cider Association, they have two bills actually in right now that they're trying to get passed. Also, the Farm Bureau, they are also advocates of DTC. So this is an example. Let's see if I can click it. This is an interesting thing, and if you guys contact me, I can ship you the link to some of these things. And actually, in New York State, they're actually trying to pass a wine retailers DTC bill. Interestingly enough, the New York State Brewers Association has not done anything. So why, I don't know. So. I've talked to them about it. I've offered to volunteer my services for free to project manage it. I have my feelings, which I don't want to voice publicly. You know? Oh, back there. Yeah. You said it, I didn't do it.
Yeah, they said that.
Yeah. Yep. No, it's, I would, again, this could get me in trouble, but my feeling, the New York State Brewers Association is there to defend the rights of what? The brewers, not the distributors. But, but yeah, that's simply put. And as you'll see, pretty much the wholesale associations and their lobbying money have shot down various DTC legislations in various states. They shot one down in Illinois. They shot one down in Georgia, Texas. There's just various states. I'm actually surprised that California got that far. As you can imagine, the California, whatever they're called, the California Wine and Beer Spirit Wholesalers Association, I'm surprised it actually got that far, because I remember seeing a statistic on the alcohol wholesalers and their contributions to politicians, compared to the state guilds. It was crazy. It was like this compared to that. It was like literally a 50-fold difference, for the obvious reasons. These are billion-dollar companies. A lot of the big wholesalers, the Southerns, the Reyes groups, the, Sheehan's, if hopefully no one here is from Sheehan, so, and that is a problem. Excuse me? Oh, unsheehan, okay. So, and like I said, it's just really unfair, and it makes no sense, because wineries can do it. Wineries have done it for 15 years. So all of the propaganda that the beer or the wholesaler tier has said of why DTC shipping shouldn't be allowed. Oh, you're going to get underage drinking and, age verification, not payment of excise tax. Wineries have been doing it for 15 years with virtually no problem. Is it flawless? Of course not. But it can be done. So it's just really, political will on the part of the distillery organizations, the brewery organization, they're pushing it through. And, I'll show you the difference here with what the winery industry has done. So beer, obviously the Brewers Association, various state guilds. Are you guys familiar with the U.S. Department of Treasury? They were just polling people in the industry of how they can make the alcohol industry better. Is anyone familiar of this initiative at all? Yeah, it's only one person. That's actually very sad. Basically, your government, the State Department, the Department of Treasury was asking people in the industry, how can we make the alcohol system better and fairer for you guys? and it got very little play, very little interest with the guilds at the state level. They're asking you how to change the laws, what you guys need to change the laws so it's fairer for you. Obviously, 3-tier, franchise law, DTC shipping, and various other key points for brewers. Excuse me?
When did they solicit?
This was back in July of 2021. Yeah, I've asked people I know in the industry. Very few people have heard of it. Very few people even made comments on it, which, they were asking how to make things better for, the small and medium-sized, breweries, distilleries, and wineries.
What, did they send out emails? Like, how did they ask?
No, there was a link. You can voice your opinion.
Yeah.
You can type in, hey, I'm a small brewer, give a quick description of what you are and what changes you would want. Oh, I want franchise reform, I want self-distribution rights, whatever you wanted. It was a commission set up by the president to, essentially see what the issues are with the alcohol industry and potentially what the, Treasury Department can do, to fix some of these problems. The first thing is know what are the problems, then is seeing what they could do obviously at the federal level. Would they ever repeal 3-tier? No, probably not. But make things a little bit fairer. Let's say self-distribution rights, franchise law reform, various things like that. So, no, DTC.
Can you still go and make comments?
I don't think so. Here, we can click it. I think the comment period is over. Yeah, it's over. They did, here's the whole report, which they published. Yeah, so it's already, yeah. Like I said, I'm not surprised that only like one person raised their hand because, I'm in the industry, I know people, and they didn't even know about this. But it's, and like I said, if someone's interested, I can email you the whole report of the findings and so on and so forth. Wine and spirits, these two groups are probably the two groups that really enacted change in the United States with winery DTC shipping. They literally had two approaches, a passive approach and an active approach. Active approach was they pooled their resources and actively sued state by state, saying, hey, what you're doing is against the 2005 Supreme Court decision, Graham-Holt-Heald, Dormant Commerce Clause. They went after specific key states to change their laws. Like I said, if you go there, there's still laws. You can, if you ever go to the website, there's always laws. They're changing. They're just trying to make, like New Jersey had a ridiculous law, like the quantity ship limit in New Jersey was like 2 cases a year or something like that. They're trying to change that. So you can see here all the various legislative efforts they're trying to do, specific for wine, unfortunately, But, they are without question, and also the Wine Institute are, the two advocacy groups, that really push. And that's what the brewery industry needs. And in my opinion, the brewery industry, along with the distilleries, you guys need to combine. By yourself, number one, you don't have enough money. To hire a lawyer conservatively is probably going to cost you $500,000 per state to go out, depending on how much pushback the state is going to give you. I've talked to the lawyer who actually did Graham-Holt-Heald of what it would take to go after. He says, on average, about $500,000. Certain states, you can talk $2 to $3 million. I know in Texas, they went after to change their laws and spent about $2.5 million, and they lost still. So it is not cheap. So DTC regulation here. This is what I was saying about the wholesaler tier. In 2021, the state of Illinois Brewers Guild tried to pass an act to allow both distilleries and breweries to ship DTC. Interestingly enough, the part that allowed brewers and distilleries to ship DTC was kicked out. And if you just read the comments here, they weren't able to gain a support agreement with the beer distributors, which is which is no surprise because they have the pockets of the politicians. The U.S., are you guys familiar with the U.S. Postal Service trying to ship alcohol? Anyone? Okay, again, similar.
This morning,
Yeah. See, there's two people. That is a key issue that everyone in the beer industry, wine industry, distillery industry should say, yes, contact your congressperson. Because number one, it's more competition for FedEx and UPS. So, one would think the rates would go down. That for me is like, they're trying to do things to help you guys. No, this bill that's the whole point. This bill is trying to make it legal for them. This is actually the fourth time that they've tried to allow the Postal Service to actually sell alcohol or to ship alcohol. Every time it's been shot, guess who? The wholesaler here has lobbied against it. Here's another thing. Same thing in the state of Georgia. They passed the bill. This is the kind of ironic thing. A gas station in Georgia can ship beer, but the brewery cannot. There was a carve-out at the behest of the Georgia Wholesalers Association to take that language out for Governor Kemp to sign the bill. So, yeah, I could go on and on and on and on with various examples. Okay, DTC, ask yourself, what are you looking to get out of DTC? Why are you doing it? What is your goal? What human and financial resources do you have to go towards DTC? And again, what level of automation will you need, in particular for the compliance? Again, doing 10 orders a day, no big deal. But once you scale up, yeah, it does become an issue where you do need to automate things. This gets back now to myself. As you can notice, DTC is something I understand and do, and I've been coming up with a platform to do it. Unfortunately, I've had to change my platform because my original model was to do a marketplace site where breweries could join my site. I would handle the compliance. The breweries would just get a ship notice, like a PDF file. Oh, someone ordered these 5 SKUs of your beer. Here's the pack it, and ship it out. Thing is, there's been various changes legislative-wise where various states are not allowing these types of DTC marketplaces to exist because there's a tricky point of who is the actual seller of record. So if you guys are familiar in the wine industry, there's places called Vino Shipper, I don't know if you've heard Wine Direct, and there's various third-party marketplace platforms. In my opinion, a lot of those platforms, will have to adapt because various states are specifically putting laws in that if you're doing, in this case, winery direct-to-consumer shipping, you actually have to purchase it from the winery. You cannot use these third-party platforms when you're shipping across state lines. So again, handling the dry zip codes, you can see how it's done. So let's say Vermont, then I plug in all the zip codes. For the compliance, managing ship quantities, the same thing, and this is an example, state of Ohio, and it differs. It gets very, very complicated. In some states, based on the ABV of the beer, there's a different limit, there's a different excise tax, so on and so forth. Same thing for wine. Some states even have brandy, its own separate category. Mead is a separate category. Cider is a separate category, all with various quantity ship limits, all with various different excise taxes, so on and so forth. So that's, like I said, is the compliance thing gets very, very complicated. Then calculating the excise tax, as I mentioned. And if you can see here, for the tax rates, based on this is actually in the state of Vermont, where based on ABV, it differs, the excise rates. Going back, this is an interesting propaganda campaign that the wholesaler tier is doing. If you have time, basically just stupid myths about direct-to-consumer shipping. This is from the Wine and Spirits Wholesalers Association. These just undermine states' rights, endangers consumer. It's all BS, people. But they've got the money, they've got the PR strength to get it out there. And if you ever read this, it's just laughable about some of the things that they're saying. DTC cannot coexist with safe and healthy. Wineries have been doing it for 15 years, people, with virtually no problem, But, again, they have the deep pockets, so it's just a propaganda campaign, Unlevel playing field, that's the biggest hypocrisy there is with the distributor tier. Unless the states or three-tier forces every distributor that any brewery, winery or distillery that wants to work with, they are forced to work with you, how is it unlevel? It makes no sense at all. They are the gatekeepers, as we all know here. They pick and choose what brands, they're going to bring in. So that uneven playing field is the biggest hypocrisy when they state that. And that's all my presentation. Any questions? Like I said, Tabor, they had a decision. Which states Tabor would ship to when it started out compared to now, that list has slowly been chopped down because they haven't get the season to system. There's a lot of sites that they have. But like I said, if you are dealing with any of those, they cannot tell you clearly how they are doing the alcohol compliance. Afterwards. To tell you, here's our platform, this is how the alcohol excise tax is calculated, this is how we're monitoring quantity shipment. Not physically show what platform, what they're doing, they are not doing it. I'm not advocate for it, but it's not easy. Platform working will be easy. What I'm looking to do is to have just an alcohol compliance platform that's in the cloud that you're using for. That would handle that compliance. Work that. I understand, I know, complexities of it, the legalities of it, but you're right, it's hard. Especially for a small Belgium is doing Dtc. Nothing at all.
No problem.
Other than getting alcohol sugar down there.
Let's say there's so many.
I guess, what do you call it? I
So
would
there are
check on the
companies that-
SLA on the legalities of that. As a weird aside, I have a separate company in non-alcoholic space. After New York State's, that's called Carino. After New York State's first non-alcoholic beer and wine spirit. Because your alcohol, it's always going to be more complicated because that facility you have, that's always going to be. Yes, but your third-party facility, more than likely they would have to have an alcohol.